It's an area, this is a word related to the period of history of the Roman Empire, but essentially it's the Caucasus, between Chechnya and Georgia. You know where that is, Charles? But get an idea of Chechnya and Georgia? North of Iran, there's Azerbaijan, Armenia, heading north, and then there's the Caucasus Mountains. Yeah. So, you know, every civilization writes its own history. Like, what if the American Indians wrote the history of the United States? It'd be a different history than the way the people that won those wars write the history. The people that win the wars always write the history, right? Well, the Romans wrote the history of these people. They didn't know anything about these people. They just came marching. They decided to start marching out of the Caucasus, and they just started marching, and they were great warriors. And they started marching into the Roman Empire. And you know what it's like to march in the Roman Empire. Nobody gets away with that, if you know Roman history at all. I mean, essentially, the Romans practiced genocide better than anybody. If somebody challenged them, they would amass every army they had, and they would wipe out every single person except the ones they turned into slaves. They were like, they were clear. Clear like Kurtz, when he was talking about how clear the Viet Cong was. If somebody got vaccinated by the Americans, they would cut off their arm. And he was so impressed by how clear that was. The Romans were clear in that way. So these people were the Alanians. That's their name for themselves. Their leader was named Alan. It'd be Alan probably, but we'd say it in English, Alan. And they marched through Rome, and the Romans couldn't stop them. So we know them as the barbarians. Everybody's heard of the barbarians, right? That marched into the Roman Empire. And they marched right through it. They won all the wars, and they settled in Gaul. That's South France. That was Rome's richest province. And in terms of just the land and, you know, what it produced, South France, very fertile area. And had a lot of seaport advantages and all that stuff. They stayed there about 2 or 3 generations, and they got itchy feet and started marching again. They marched up, and they took over France, England, Scotland, Ireland. And they posited their culture there. And all the characters in Camelot come from the Caucasus, except Guinevere. So my life, just in that spontaneous way things happen, led me to this place, this small country. On the map today, it still goes by the Soviet name of North Ossetia. So I'm just saying that sometime, I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but it could be of interest to study where your blood comes from, because the place that the big people tell you that you came from usually isn't the place you came from. And it's not because they're lying, it's because they don't know themselves. Because blood, remember that anthropologist that was here? Like, yeah, in the first third of what we did. She was just writing her PhD. She was from a school in Idaho doing her PhD work. Remember her? And she's the one that said, in all of my study of anthropology, I've come to the conclusion you can sum it up as fucking and fighting. And that's how everything came to be the way it is today. And isn't that the truth? And then that's the truth about blood and how it got to be the way it is. Human beings like her, they have these, they're passionate. They're passionate about wanting to conquer other human beings. They're passionate about having sex with all kinds of people. They're passionate about using power to control They're passionate about all kinds of things. And the whole history of the planet is just a history of an excessive, out of control display of passion. Yes?
So did you get like one of those swab tests?
You could.
No, did you to find out?
Well, I did, but it's just because somebody told me they wouldn't. They said I'd like to do this routine with you, like a healer type guy. It was our next door neighbor a few years ago, and he said, but I need to see your thing. So I did it, but I didn't read it because I wasn't interested in it. No, I got this because somebody said, a friend of mine asked me, a Russian woman asked me to go to her country with her and help her heal a very dear friend who was a significant player in what brought down the Soviet Empire. And we were there for 10 days, but we got it done in 6. And then I took a chiropractor with me, and he met a lady who spoke fluent English because she was a translator. And she wanted us to come to lunch. So I went to lunch with her, and she invited us to go to her home country with her about a month later. And he had left his business too long. He said he couldn't go, and I said, okay. And I came here, and I was supposed to teach a retreat, and I think I didn't do it. I think I just felt I needed to do that. And I went with her, and we went on a journey. I can tell you so many things about this journey, and it wasn't what I had in mind to talk about today, but I'll tell you one thing about this journey, because this is really interesting, and this links up the idea of the Caucasus. In my view, there are only 2 significant parts of the planet. Africa, the birth of human beings, and the Caucasus. These are the 2 most significant points of origin on the planet. Today I couldn't possibly tell this whole story, but I just do want to tell you one part that really emphasizes the point. So after meeting I learned, for instance, that they practice a religion that is pagan. I found out that when Peter, who's only called great because he slaughtered more Russians than anybody in Russian history, and he consolidated Russia with the Christian church, the most darkest of alliances when the state and the church get together, which happened in Europe with the divine right of kings, right? We know about that. Peter was not able to convert these people. This is a country that now has 500,000 people, smaller than any state in the United States. Stalin, he had the same vision. He wanted to unify Russia into one Soviet state of where everybody was, in the communist vision that was coming through his mind. And he forcibly, Russia's just a gigantic country. And it's a tribal country. There are people, so many different ethnic communities that are completely unique with languages and cultures and religions and everything. He went beyond what Peter did. Peter just used force and got people to convert to Christianity. Wasn't that hard. Stalin had a bigger vision. He actually took every group and moved them to a part of Russia that was really far away from where their culture was. So if you think, okay, you were in Kazakhstan. Can you visualize Kazakhstan? You take the culture of Kazakhstan and you move those people out in Siberia somewhere. And you say either you move or you just kill them all. Most of them moved. He wasn't able to move the people of Alanya. He just wasn't able to. So they stuck to their pagan religion. So I discovered that. They meet in a hall, and in this hall, they feast, and they do 3 or 4 drinks, like shots, like, you know, like your cow people. That's a nice way to say it, not cow men or cow women, but cow people. So you're cow people, and you're at the bar, you know, you're doing shots. So they're doing this, and each shot is to a chakra, and to the deity of that chakra. So we all know enough about yoga to appreciate how powerful that can be. And then the training, the breath training they get, is to be able to have enough fire to metabolize these shots so they don't get drunk. So they actually raise their frequency with each shot. And so in one part of this long hall, I could say not quite as long as here, maybe from that phone to the back, and if you put a wall down the middle, but kind of shrunk it about a third, and there were 2 sides, the feasting parts on this side, there are 3 or 4 shots, and a lot of feasting. A big table, big old wooden table, gigantic platters of like pieces of lamb and vegetables, pretty amazing, very rustic. And then at a certain point, that ends, because the whole families are together there, and then the moms and the children, they go put the kids to bed, and the men go around to the other side. And on the other side, they do the rest of the chakras. And they have all these relics there. And paintings of what people looked like 1,000 years ago or more. And just relics from their previous, from past. So I looked like this then, but I think I was wearing all white then. And their paintings they looked just like me. And they were all dressed kind of European. So it was really funny. They said, you look like more us than us. So that was one thing that happened. And the other thing that happened is in their drink, they're not Russians, but they're part of Russian culture, because they're in the middle of it all. And so people of that culture see Americans, and they just like to make fools out of them by drinking them under the table.
Yeah.
So their religion teaches them to metabolize, but I can actually metabolize better than them. This was all just discovered spontaneously. I just went with the flow. And when we got to the 7th, 8th chakra, there weren't many of them left. But they'll also go up to the chakras above the head. And we got a little bit that way, and they just acknowledged that I had some superpower from their point of view. And all it was just yoga, just, the inner fire of the Dumo, the inner psychic heat that we developed through doing Rudra's practice. So that's not the interesting part. Here's the interesting part. So Muli, who was the head of this is the name of their building, the Kuvan Dawn. What does that sound like? Kuvan Dawn. Does that sound like another word? Kuvan? Coven. Yeah, witches, covens. Pagan, right? Telling you. This is not like, oh, that's kind of cool. This is very, very real. This is a authentic pagan culture that has its full power. Full power. And none of the dictators could ever conquer it. So Muli said, you need to go up. And Muli's name is not Russian. It's a very Asian name. And he was dressed like a Turkish man in a bowler hat. He was kind of a small man. But he had very much Asian features, more like, not so much Chinese features, but more like Mongolian features. Kind of like Genghis Khan's blood, that kind of blood. And he said, you need to go up the mountain. and see the towers. So I was with the brothers of the woman were being my guides. And they do have a history of the guest, you know, and they did treat me with that respect you treated a guest in traditional culture. I mean, there was so much going on underneath, you know what I mean, American, and their family had been the communist bosses of that area, and they had all their power stripped away, and you know, there was so much stuff going on.
How long ago was this?
I don't know.
1998,
88.
or more like 98, I think.
So, next day we go up the mountain, and have any of you ever been to Colorado where you go high enough where you're above the tree line and there aren't any trees anymore? It's just rocks? Did they have that out in Wyoming? Mountains that high?
Where?
In Wyoming, did they have
Montana,
that?
she's in Montana.
Montana, they have that?
Mm-hmm.
The mountains are high enough to go over the tree line? I didn't know if the Rockies were high that far away.
Pretty high.
Yeah, I'm more familiar with the Boulder, you know, that area. But anyway, you know what I mean. So you go after a while, there are no more trees. It's just a bunch of boulders, and then you look a little further and you see arêtes, which are these almost like the blade of a knife. And that's also in Montana. That's part of the Continental Divide, right? Well, I'm pretty sure it is, because it isn't an extension of the Rocky Mountains. So the Continental Divide is what happens when a drop of rain falls on the sharp edge of what's called geologists call a arête. And it splits it in two. One will go into the Gulf of Mexico through the river system, and one will go into the Baja, you know, Baja Sea or whatever that is, or the Pacific, but usually the Baja. So I go up there, and all of a sudden I see these stone towers. I want to say how big they were. I would say if you took this rug and right by Megan's cushion, just considered this section of the rug and made it square, that'd be about how big they were. But they were taller than this building, and they were just made out of stone. And so they were from the ancient people of that area. And before the time of Stalin, nobody would ever go in there. There were just stories that people would decide it was time for them to leave their body, and that they would just go in and close the door. But there were stories, because it was more from ancient times, more than 1,000 years ago. So the Soviet society was big on science. Their religion was science. So they wanted to study everything, and they had power. So they broke down the doors to look and see what was inside. And can you imagine what they found?
Nothing.
It's something you could find in India, but that's only, or Tibet. They found skeletons sitting in lotus pose.
Wow.
Mm.
Really?
Yeah, skeletons, human skeletons, just sitting in lotus pose, but just a skeleton. Well, this is part of yogic culture. If a person's on the path of going, one is able, if one goes in that direction, to do the practices that one can actually leave one's body in lotus pose through their head, and then the body will get smaller and smaller and smaller. It's called the rainbow body, until there's nothing left. There's a fellow that did this in Tibet very recently.
Or they say except hair and nails, that's what's left.
Yeah, only thing left is hair and nails. And this isn't a myth. People still do this over in India and Tibet. Well, I don't know about Tibet, because Tibet's like Chinese now. So they do it in India. Anything that's done in India could probably be done somewhere else, but I've never heard of it except India. But it's definitely part of Indian yoga culture. So I was real familiar at that time of Yogi Bhajan. He was my root guru for 12 years. He took me out personally, and I was with him for 12 years, from 1971 to 1984. That's about 12 years. But I also received a lot from Osho or Rajneesh. And I was always struck by so many pictures of them. You could put side by side, and you'd hardly know which was which. And then as I got to learn more of different other yoga masters from India, I could see these same features. And the whole idea of yoga in India is it came from the Caucasus. So if you have Caucasian blood, what that means is your blood is from the Caucasus. It's just one type of blood, and in every blood there's an energy. And you can travel along the lines of the energy in blood. So if you have more than one kind of blood, you can travel along the energy of that blood. So obviously in the history of blood, there's a lot of distortion. But you can go into the essence of what is the energy and the different strains of blood that you carry. Remove the distortions and find the essence of the power of the blood. Because the blood, which of course, you know, the DNA, the blood, the essence of life, has all the power and all the information. There are many ways to study your blood other than getting swabbed, and I'm not saying don't do that. You could meditate on your blood. You can talk to your blood. You can ask your blood questions. It's living. It's intelligent. Like this morning, go ahead.
I'd like to share something about this because my growing up, I was told that I was Native American.
You were what?
Native American, Blackfoot, and I never believed it. And I always felt like I really wanted to connect with Native American culture because that's what they were telling me, and I think it's beautiful. But I always felt like it wasn't right, and so I did get tested because I just felt like I really wanted to know. I thought I was African. And now I know I'm African, and I know where in Africa I'm from, so now I can really tune in with my blood, my ancestry.
Yes, there you go.
It's pretty magical.
Yeah, and it's always possible to remove the distortions. Like this morning, I was in meditation. It's like different people you can go see different people. Like I forget, it's been so long now, and I saw Kalayalani before I got in there. So I've had many wipes since this morning, but I remember Steve Jobs came in as the energy of pure creativity. And anybody that's been interested in Steve Jobs, it's maybe seen the movies, know he was an interesting character, and he had issues or maybe, or whatever the blah 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 is about somebody's life. But there was a channel of pure creativity in this man. And there was also an essence of a unique form in which creativity was arising in this man, this pure. It has nothing to do with the person and their life and what they went through and their relationships, and all that stuff. And meditating on blood is very similar to meditating on the essence of anything. And anyone who interests you. Like we just finished Christmas. Not that Jesus was born on December 23rd. No, that's the solstice, a pagan holiday that was co-opted by the church so they could say Jesus was born then. But anyway, we just finished that. And so you can go into be inspired by the story of someone named Jesus, or you can go into the essence of the consciousness. And your consciousness in meditation can become pure, clear, quiet. And you can join with the consciousness of anything, because all these things are certainly outside of time. The only thing that's in time is the physical body and the five senses which allow it to navigate the world. We spend every day just, look over there, some pretty mountains. Oh, Sophia's in front of them. Oh, yeah, she's cool. Oh, look at that red thing over there. I gotta pee and I walk to the toilet. That's all the body. And that is all through just five senses, which have the most narrow, and it's narrow, but not in any sense of narrow is less. It's more like very specific function. In other words, the total range of perception of the 100% of all that is, which is life, which is all pervading space, which is anybody who went to high school or maybe even grammar school learned that we're 99% space, because they developed microscopes that could see it. And then they developed more powerful microscopes that could see that there really weren't atoms, there were photons, and they were kind of liquidy and light. And so the point is, out of the totality of what is, which is all here now, and is a unitary field, there are these specific organs that are focused on seeing, hearing, tasting, tasting, and smelling, and they navigate the body. And the body is decaying slowly from the time it comes into form. And then after a while, it goes back into the dust. And time is of the body and of the senses. Time does not exist outside of this. Time is a perception of this limitation, not limitation in a negative sense, but precise, specific limitation in that sense. So once you realize that you can accept yourself completely as an advanced intelligence in a form that is impermanent, then you can just get over that being interesting. Not that it's uninteresting, but you can get over the idea that's, once you get that, you can say, okay, well, I got that. Once you understand something clearly, it's not interesting anymore. It's like, for instance, I'm really not interested in all of what I know, because I already know what I know. I'm interested in what other people know. I could listen to anybody tell their story or say their ideas, and maybe a lot of it sounds like blah, 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 but there's always something interesting there that I didn't know. That's true for everybody. But what we already know, what we've already become, how could that possibly be interesting? I mean, we already did that. So I'm just saying, once you get clear that you're an advanced computer in a physical structure, and that you're a marvel of computing, and we only use these words because we made computers to try to understand what? Ourselves, right? Why else would we make computers? We make them to understand ourselves. We're going to keep working on computers and artificial intelligence until we break the barrier of better than ourselves. And then we'll the more we go in that direction, the more we'll understand that the God that created us is ourselves. Because once we get to the point where we've made something better than ourselves, computes better, an android being or a artificial intelligent being that's functioned better than ourselves, then we're the creators of ourselves. And the closer we get to that, the closer we get to realizing that the creator, that I'm thinking of what Kalalani was saying, he put it in the metaphor of love. The creator that we've been seeking is ourselves. So once we get to the point where we're stable in that, and we get over this fascination with ourselves, because we solve the riddle, not because it's a wrong thing to be fascinated. That's the best thing to be fascinated about, ourselves. Oh my goodness, if you can't learn about yourself, what could anything out there have any interest? But once you get that, okay, I got that, then it's uninteresting. Then you start looking into broader ranges of yourself. That are much more that are in a much more expanded field than the us that has a name and poops and eats and has relationships and does stuff until the spirit separates from the body. There's a flash of light at conception, there's a flash of light at death. And one, the spirit comes into a physical form, and the other leaves. Between that we have an us. But once we get to the us is us, then we start expanding beyond the five senses where time is not relevant. And in that essence of us, we can connect with any essence, and that's the point. So you can go beyond the Jesus, the inspirations of Christ, or the story of Christ, or any historical figure. I'm not picking on Christ. And you can feel the essence of that when you can feel the essence of you. The essence of you can feel the essence of that. It's apples and apples. I did want to talk about that. I wasn't planning to talk about the stones, but let's just say the stones tell us that there are many possibilities for us. The stone towers tell us that there are many possibilities for us. And we should never be limited by anything we should never have belief. We should just have an open mind to any possibility. Having stories or mythologies or beliefs or conceptual frameworks. Little foxes on the hillside, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky. That's the point. They're just ticky-tacky. And all we can do with the boxes is obliterate! Just clears the space. When I was off to the other interesting part of this trip to what I thought was Russia and then came to be Alanya was we had a bookstore in Leucadia, this community, and it had this huge parking. Has anybody here ever been to what's that place called? The Raw Foods place?
Oh, Peace Pies?
Yeah, anybody heard of Peace Pies? Well, just when you turn into Peace Pies, there's a building on the left, the hair salon. You know what I mean?
Standalone building.
What?
The standalone building.
Yeah, standalone building, hair salon. If you're coming from the north, you take a right in, and there's a hair salon just as you turn in, and on the other side there's a food place. Well, that was our bookstore. And it has this huge parking lot back, and Peace Pies has like 3 little parking spots. And they have a big sign up at this huge parking lot. It's just for a hair salon. Don't park here, you'll get towed off. So we used to have 5 years we had a bookstore there. And the afternoon before, I was going to get on the plane the next day to go to Russia. I went over just to check in, say hi, goodbye to different people. So I parked in the back, right by the stairs. And in the very far corner, caddy corner, the furthest distance from one side of the parking lot to the other, there was a van with a couple of guys in their mid-30s dressed in more like just casual clothes. And they were looking at me and I was looking at them, they were looking at me, there was some magnetism happening. So we started walking toward each other. And they introduced themselves. They were Krishna consciousness ambassadors. They were not the people that, you know, have the pigtails and saying Hare Krishna. They were like ambassadors for the Krishna consciousness movement. And they were telling me about, you know, started chatting about what they do and everything. And then so I just told them where I was about to go. And they said, oh, we were there. And they said the most powerful deity, one of them said the most powerful deity that we've ever experienced outside of the Krishna deity in Bombay at the Krishna temple. I've stayed there, so I knew what they were talking about. Is in this place called Alanya. And it's a 3-legged horse called Vastruji. And they told me exactly where it was. And so on the way from the airport, we passed that place and we stopped and I got to experience that. And of course, it wasn't like the Krishna temple in Bombay. It was just a mound. A mound. And a little like, you know, like our water temple there? A little water temple-like thing, like a stupa, kind of close to it. So when I tell you that's happened in that kind of way that life just sometimes happens, you can see how it was just a little bit of magic. I think the most important thing is to obliterate the little boxes. You don't really need them. Nobody needs the little boxes. They have no use at all. Unless we want to hold on to our fear. Because the only way that we want to hold ourselves into conceptual frameworks is a fear of what we might really be, or what might really is. All fears arise from the fear of mortality, that here we have this thing we call our life, and one day we might be dead or we'd be dead, and what's the point? So once we get over that and just obliterate all the little boxes and live in an open space, and just be open to anything can happen and not care about what it is. We just say whatever wants to happen, happen. That's the first step in being able to connect your essence to any essence. And to live in the world of essences while in a human form. Noel? He's not here.
He's right in there.
That's all right. Yeah, but I had such an incredible morning, and I actually did something I've never done before. I made some notes of things I would thought. I mean, it's so hard for me to get here, and it's like my body hates cars. My body just doesn't. It just hates cars. It wipes my body out. And so, you know, I just take some notes, because I was gonna seek Lailani, which is another huge white light wipeout, so I just made a few notes, and I just covered everything. I'm pretty good, because I've been looking for the notes. But Sage had said he wanted me to talk about something, didn't he say that?
I did.
Yeah.
And it could be related. Can I say two things? So yesterday you got to this point where we did the one, right? And
We
then
what?
We did the one. We did the 4, 3,
Yeah.
2, 1. Then we did the one, and then we're talking about the molten magnetic core of the planet.
Yeah.
And it felt like you were really gaining somewhere, and the light was going down. And then we had that conversation about technology, and then we never came back to like whatever that was at that moment. And I'm just curious if you remember.
Yeah. That's a difference between technology and liberation technologies. Yes, I felt the interruption. And on one level, I'd rather not have those interruptions. But on another level, there's always a gift. So the gift is to come back to it today. So on one level, you can see the imperfection in something. But then if you look through the telescope the other way, you see where the source, how source is guiding. So that's why you could say there's no objective good or bad. There's not really any problem. The sameness usually isn't bareness. There's certainly no other. And our own 2 feet carry us to where I am. So you wanted to look more at what part of this?
Well, I don't know where you were going, but it just.
Well, that was it.
Oh.
In other words, that was it.
Okay.
Because when your root is your heart. Okay, there are 3 hearts in the body. Actually there are 4 hearts in the body, because I'm going to go for the heart and wings first. Start here and feel your heart. Go ahead.
The other thing I mentioned outside was the golden nectar coming up over the brain, and so I think
Do you feel really blissful right now, almost drunk?
just when we were like, a little bit, yeah. That's it.
I think, I wasn't even inspired to go into one, because we have joined, something magical has happened, which should be normal, with liberty arising. And we're joined in a community of one. I mean, we have become something new already. There's no question about it. And this term only came through in the last month or so. And it wasn't out before. It was here before, but it wasn't out. And so, but it came to me, and I've given it to you. And I'm creating with it. That's all I ever do anymore. And one thing that Rain and I really like is, let me give a preface and just say that our meditation root has come from these 2 beings. And one of these 2 beings initiated a man named Rudy from New York. And he brought through a form of meditation that's the purest form of Kundalini Yoga. A simple exercise and a way of working. And it's all in a book called Spiritual Cannibalism, and you don't even need to read the whole book. Just read like a third of it.
And it's on the corner of the puja.
And what?
That book is on the corner of our main puja. Spiritual Cannibalism, the book. Somebody wants to pick it
I
up.
want some water. Do you got any water?
Yeah.
Behind you.
I can drink some of this.
Christ's light was shining through this all night last night. Did anybody notice that?
So,
The candle sitting in front of the Christ
I did
picture,
notice
and it was
that.
shining through your water all night last night.
boy, so let's get more drunk.
There you go.
Just think, you can get more stinking from thinking than you can from drinking, and to feel is for real. Sage, you know how to feel. You live and feel. So can you feel a beautiful essence above you? Can you feel it? Can you open, like think about it like a missile silo and have the doors open? Except there's not a missile inside, there's your heart. And your heart has layers. This is layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and the root is layer 4. That's all your heart. That's your heart. And you just open the silo doors. And that's just coming in. Can you feel it just pouring in? There you go.
So I wanted you to talk about it though.
I just did.
I know. I didn't feel it before you, I wasn't present to it.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
know, I mean, yeah. I can say, God damn it, why weren't you here the first day? Or I can say, wow, if you'd have been here the first day. And I can say them both, right? Neither one of them mean anything because we're only in the now. If we ever spend any time out of the here and now, we're lost for that period. Anytime we're thinking about the past, we're dead. Anything we're thinking about the future, we aren't born. We're only alive when we're in the here and now. The here isn't a place. It's here in the body. The body is the deity that we are seeking. The body created itself. And the body is alive. And the 1% of the body, the physical part, falls away. Nothing happens in the rest of it. And then it can reform again with a different body. Some people call that reincarnation. I don't experience it that way. I just experienced it. Right now, I could easily, my spirit could easily separate from my body. And I would just be me. And then out of my imagination, out of whatever came to me, whatever I saw, a new form would be created. We're the creators of our own. We are the deities we are seeking. So Rudy, I studied different things and everything, but when I found Rudy, I didn't look anymore. I just started doing that simple practice. We call it Rudra meditation. And I did it for 11 years and I accomplished the result I always wanted to in yoga, because when I met an awake person, I wanted to be awake like that. Well, I didn't know what that meant at the time, but it means being in a state of awareness through waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. So it took me 11 years to get there and waking, and then I noticed some things that told me, oh, because I do the practice and I'd lose energy, and then I figured it out. Okay, that worked. And then I got a gift. You always get little gifts. Just kind of like when you're in the video game and you're in the forest and you're like Link, looking for Zelda or something like that. You're looking around and everything. And then you run into magical mushrooms, or you'll be like Mario, hit your head on something, coins, or flowers fall on your head, something like that. You get a gift. And then 2 more years working with that gift. Then it was through waking, dreaming, and sleep. So, done! That was what I always wanted. But that was 1988. And Rudy said, I'm just laying the foundation for something else. Laying the foundation for something that's coming, that's much more advanced, but this is the foundation. And a couple of times he hinted at what it was. It's all in, some of his hints are in the last chapter of Spiritual Cannibalism called Time and Space, which are real different than the other chapters. They're more like almost dreamy. And Rudy's so earthy. Anyway, a friend of Rain's got dropped off at our house by a guy who was going to host her at another house, and that fell through, and she didn't have a place to stay, and he just called me up, because he knows we always keep a guest room. I mean, it's part of our tradition. You go to any of our homes and we always have guest room. It's part of the ancient world, you know, that the guest is God. And if you don't keep a room for what you aren't and you don't know about, then you're sealing your own coffin before your body goes away. So always keeping a guest room and always having your house open for the guest. And not having a filter on what that is. Then if you put up a filter, all you're going to get is your filter. You're not going to get what you don't know. You're going to get what you're afraid. You're not going to get what you're afraid of because you're going to filter it. And you're afraid of something you don't even know what it is. Think about that. You don't even know what you're afraid of. But you develop concepts, make them into filters, and then you would only let in things that felt safe to the filter. Think how that little box. Right? You know, Sophia Argabright. I love that word. Argabright. Did I pronounce it right?
Yeah.
Wow, it's German, right? Sounds Germany. Argabright.
Actually not sure.
Well, Argus. It's like Arga and then bright. You could be Conan's wife. It's like that. Arga, bright. So it took me a little time to get to know this person, and then this person had a best friend who's Rain Love over there. And then she said one time, well, I'd like to have my best friend over. I said, oh, okay. So she came over and, oh, hi, how are you? And then a few weeks later, she said, you know, I think I'd like for her to move in. So I said, okay. But the rooms were all full. And so she said, well, they'll be gone soon. So the other person's like a bit of a wizard, you know, bit of a wizard. So they can, you know, kind of like Genie, they can go, and all of a sudden they'll go over there. So it's just that wizard stuff. I'm not the wizard type, but it's nice to have a wizard around. So then Ray moved in. But it turns out they were carrying what Rudy talked about. They were carrying what I just could say, Rudra 2.0. They were carrying what he said would come. Well, I was so in tune with this, so dedicated to it, so complete in it that I understood it right away. And so one thing that we did at the retreat that the doctor and Rain came to is we had the lower frequencies of this more advanced work just playing in the environment, because it's the frequencies that are powerful. And I didn't think we have them playing in here. They're just frequencies. It's moving it from the level of doing the work to letting the frequencies do the work. And just having an orientation of how to get out of the way of so the frequencies can do their work. And the frequencies, what they want to do, because they're coming from the magnetic core of the earth, the heart of the earth. They're coming from there. That's the pure frequency. And so what they want to do is wipe out everything that is not you. That's all the stories, the memories. Doesn't mean you can't remember anything, but it means all the emotional content, all the goo, whatever it is that makes the walls that form the little boxes. They want to just dissolve all of that back into its original. Go back in, dissolve, fill you with pure frequency. So I knew what it was, and we just went hog wild about it, and we were playing all over the house and everything. And we just started playing it around here and telling people about it and everything. But I started doing it because I was really, I'll tell you the truth, I was bored. I already accomplished Rudy's work in 1988, and there just wasn't anywhere to go.
Born.
And it's not like I was, what?
That's the year I was born.
Huh?
That's the year I was born, 1988.
Oh, how interesting. I'm sure there's some synchronicity there. I've noticed that we're very close.
I'm you.
Were you an egg in my womb?
Maybe.
Anyway, was I an egg in your womb?
Possibly. What did you reveal?
So anyway, let's talk about hearts. Feel this heart. Feel your heart. Feel it get really warm and open. If you want to breathe in, hold your breath, you can, or you can just feel it. And let that feeling spread up to what people call the third eye, the brow. Let that feel spread and arise up to what people call the brow. And feel that feeling of the warmth and the energy of the heart here. And feel how it kind of wants to turn up like this. Just feel it. Can anybody feel that? Raise your finger. That's the heart and wings. The Sufi symbol. The people of the Sufi Way. Did you read them that blurb that describes the course from Osho? Did you read them that yet?
I have not.
Yeah, shoot. It's like Osho, who was a teacher from India, and he gave a really clear idea of what is Sufi. Osho, he said that he said that his vice was talking. He talked better than anybody. Nobody talked like Osho. So this is the upper heart. This is the human heart. Now, the yoga heart is right here. It's like the intake, the solar plexus. Right, that hole right there. And it really extends into this whole area. This is just it's an intake. It's a point where there's a pathway in and out of prana energy. But the whole area of the belly, and it's 360, like round. It's not just your front, it's 360 round. See if you can feel that, the energy of this heart moving into the energy of this gigantic part of you, this your core. See if you can feel that filling with energy. If you can feel any of that, raise your finger. Okay, so that's good. And then there's the root. The root is also your heart. It's the heart of the mother. It's the point at which the frequency of the magnetic core of the earth, which is the heart of life, is linked with the same frequency of the great one and the little one with the root. So see if you can feel your root, your tailbone area, really warm and open, liquidy. So you can feel a little about that, raise your finger. Okay, so then just feel the magnetic core of the earth. You can feel a stream, like you're sitting on imagine like a geyser. Imagine a geyser of energy, and it's coming up from the center of the earth because it's liquid energy, and it kind of, you're sitting above it, and it becomes like a pedestal that you're sitting on, like like you put a statue on a pedestal, and it's coming up strong enough so that you can kind of float around on it like that. So you can feel the connection. So you know that you're experiencing beyond the five senses that just define the physical world and that are the only way in which time exists, when you're feeling many things simultaneously. Because you're not, your eyes can only go that way, or kind of go that way, a little bit that way, you know what I mean? But this way, this is a range of feeling where you're experiencing many things simultaneously without your mind jittering back from one to the other. And so from this place, there is a central sun that exists right here. It's called the 10th chakra. When people enter God consciousness, it's their consciousness stabilizes in this central sun. It's the golden orb. And it's like the sun and the moon to the magnetic core of the earth. It's the mirror. It would be impossible for me to say which is the mirror of which. It's just the mirror. And that's full of something that as it drips through the gates that are open. In Sanskrit it's called soma, and it just fills the body with pure bliss. The body of pure bliss, which is the natural state of your body. In other words, if you're working right, you're supposed to walk around anyone who is drunk of this liquid wanders around like someone insane. Anyone who is drunk of this liquid runs around like someone insane. Yet still manages to drive a car and walk around, have friends, maybe make enough money to eat or do creative projects, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's it. That is a good one. Yeah, those gates, boy, once they're open, why would they ever close, right? Because this is part of you up here. There's more above here, but this is good for now. So if we do this again, we could perhaps explore more of the bigger space, but this feels really good, solid, stable place for us to, let's seal this as a place that we never leave. Let's seal this as our creation. Let's seal this. It's not like a class where we learned some shit and had some experiences and went on and did what we were, whoever we were before. Let's seal this as what we become. And let's never leave this place. And let's be a community of one. Community of one. And that's a wrap.